finally, let us start the concept of mergers and acquisitions. And as I have given you a warning beforehand that guys, we are not going to study accounts over here. We are not going to study accounting standards over here. So mergers in the nature of purchase, mergers in the nature of amalgamation, all those classifications, superficial classifications which have been made for accounting purposes, I am not bothered about those classifications. I am just bothered about two companies who are wanting to do their business together, be it through a new company or be it the amalgamation of the existing two companies into one of the companies, or be it through any other mode. I am not bothered about it. I am just bothered about the numbers, their valuation, how would the purchasing company value the purchase consideration to be given to the target company, how would the bidder company rate the target company. I am just bothered about that fact. So those classifications, please forget about those classifications which are made by accounting standards in case of mergers, because they are not relevant to us. We are just bothered about having some synergy benefits of operating together. We need to have a valuation which is based on the benefits which we will derive in future for the amalgamated resource sharing, amalgamated infrastructure sharing of the two companies. So, as it is said that before learning something new, you need to unlearn a lot of things which have been learned by you in the past. This is an old saying. So, you must have learned what is 1 plus 1. Of course, sir, 1 plus 1 means 2. I am asking you to unlearn it. No, from today 1 plus 1 is not 2, 1 plus 1 is 3. So what are you saying? How can 1 plus 1 be 3? 1 plus 1 is 2. What are you talking about? Guys, I am talking about the golden rule of mergers and acquisition, which is just given above the cost of capital topic in your book. I'm just referring to that golden rule of mergers and acquisition, which is 1 plus 1 is equal to 3. Now assume that there are two companies which are entering into a merger deal, A and B. A has profits of say rupees 15 crores. B has profits of say 5 crores. Then the amalgamated AB, what would be the profits of amalgamated AB? Sir, obviously 20 crores. If this is the case, then this merger is not to be done by you. Reject this merger. Don't enter into this merger deal. So, but why? Guys, if you are earning the same amount what you were earning individually, then there's no point of merging the two companies. Please go ahead and do business separately. What is the point of merging? What is the point of spending lakhs and lakhs of rupees in amalgamation, in scheme, drafting the scheme, in paying to lawyers, in paying to auditors who will do the due diligence of the two companies? What is the point of undertaking that heavy expenditure if you are not projecting increase of your revenues? So, but how would our revenues increases? Guys, our revenue will increase on the basis of shared infrastructure. So we would have 2 HR managers, 2 finance managers, 2 production managers. We might chuck out some of them. Their cost will be reduced. Our infrastructure cost will be reduced. Our raw material will be procured at bargained prices, at reduced prices, because we would have more bargaining power, because we'll be buying more from our vendors. So all these benefits will culminate into increase in profit. So your profit should at least be somewhat higher than your individual profits to have sanctity of this merger and acquisition deal. And that is why I am asking you to unlearn that 1 plus 1 is equal to 2. From today onwards, 1 plus 1 is equal to 3. But guys, don't tell this to your parents. Otherwise, your parents will say, what stupid teacher's pen drive have you bought? He's teaching you all wrong things. What are you doing? Please check his pen drives. He will ask you to check the pen drives. So do not tell this to your parents or anyone else around you. It is just for your consumption. For the valuation of mergers and acquisition, we are following this principle of 1 plus 1 is equal to 3. So what does this additional 1 signify? Guys, this signifies the synergy benefits. The benefits which are derived out of synergy, out of synergizing the two entities, is known as synergy benefit. And the additional one, which is in our 1 plus 1 is equal to 3 also, and over here also 20 plus 1, it signifies the synergy benefit, the shared cost benefits, the bargaining power, increase in bargaining power benefits, which we will derive from this mergers and acquisition, and that benefit is known as synergy benefit. So any mergers and acquisition is absolutely makes no sense if there's no synergy benefit in it. However, there are certain non-monetary factors, certain emotional factors, certain power related factors that I need to hold on this company, power related factors. You want power of that company. Those are non-monetary factors. So there are some non-monetary factors because of which this is possible, that 15 plus 5 is 20, 1 plus 1 is equal to 2 is possible for some non-monetary factors. But in our class, we are not going to discuss about non-monetary factors. We are only going to discuss about monetary factors. So it is possible that 1 plus 1 is equal to 2, but it will be good if you are having 1 plus 1 is equal to 3 in any mergers and acquisition deal. So let's study the theory of synergy, or the golden rule of mergers and acquisitions. A deal of mergers and acquisitions is successful only when there are some synergy benefits expected post merger, which means 1 plus 1 should be equal to 3. It implies that two parties or companies in the M&A deal are worth more together than what they were individually. Synergy benefits arises due to factors like economies of scale, efficiency in operations due to combined processes, etc. In other words, 1 plus 1 is equal to 3 and not 2. The additional one in the equation represents synergy. Mostly, the acquiring company pay a substantial premium on the stock market value of the target companies they buy. A merger benefits shareholders when a company's post-merger share price increases by the value of potential synergy. For sellers, synergy represents their company's future prospects. For buyers, the premium represents part of the post-merger synergy they expect can be achieved. So, for the buyer, the bidder company, who's the acquirer company, they feel that this company is worth reproducing more profits than what was envisaged in the past, and therefore they pay higher premium on acquiring these companies. And the companies which are being acquired, the target companies, they know that they can reap benefits more than what are reaped in the past, and the synergies will have some benefit for the buyer company. Therefore, they deliberately choose to take higher amount than their real value. That is the premium which they charge on their real value. So the synergy is divided between the target company and the acquirer company in some proportion. Some portion of the synergy is given to the target company, and some portion is given to the bidder company. It is divided in proportion amongst both of them. Next, there are certain exceptions to this rule, guys. Please note that there are certain exceptions. There are some exceptions to this golden rule whereby, owing to some non-monetary considerations, so there are some non-monetary consideration which are apart from the monetary things, profits, losses, nothing of this sort. They are considerations like, as I told you, getting power, some emotional connect, getting a larger share of the market, etc. Considerations a merger may happen in absence of synergy. Those exceptions will not be considered in this chapter. So those exceptions we are not going to consider in this chapter, but we are going to only consider the monetary considerations. So yes, this is the concept of golden rule of merger, guys, whereby we are trying to tell you that 1 plus 1 is equal to 3 and not 2. Okay, sir. So we got the golden rule of mergers and acquisition, which is that 1 plus 1 is equal to 2 and not 3, which is the synergy benefit rule of mergers and acquisition. And according to that rule, sir, the amount of revenue which is earned, or the amount of profits which is earned, or the return which is earned by two entities individually must definitely increase after the merger. Unless this increase happens, the merger is of no value. So that is the principle of synergy, or the golden rule of mergers and acquisition. Absolutely, guys, that is the golden rule of mergers and acquisitions. So now let us come on to the major part of mergers and acquisition, and let us see what are the various ratios, what are the various ways, methods in which we can value a mergers and acquisition deal, and now how can we calculate the purchase consideration, what will be the purchase consideration, how can we calculate it, and how can we actually go about determining what should an adequate exchange ratio be, what should be the exchange ratio between the target company and the bidder company, and how can that be calculated. Now let us see an example, guys. So there are two companies, B Limited and T Limited. So B Limited means bidder company, which is the company which is looking forward to merge target company within itself, and T Limited is the target company which is looking forward to getting merged with the bidder company. So these are two independent companies, bidder company and target company. Bidder company wants to acquire target company, and target company wants to get merged into the bidder company. That is the situation. Guys, the number of shares of both of these companies is given to you. Bidder company 10,000 rupees, target company 5,000 rupees. Oh, sorry, rupees, shares, number of shares. So 10,000 shares of bidder company and target company 5,000 shares. So this is the number of shares which are there for each of the companies. So these are the number of shareholders which are there for each of the companies. Okay, sir. Next information which we want to know about these companies is earnings per share. What is the earnings per share of these two companies? So guys, earnings per share of bidder company is 4. Earnings per share of target company is 3. Let us see what is the market price per share. Guys, market price per share of bidder company is 25. Market price per share of target company is 20. Let us also see what is the book value per share, or NAV, of the respective companies. Guys, book value per share of bidder company is 150. Book value of target company is, say, rupees 160 per share. So it may so happen that the target company is using less NAV, or is using more resources to culminate same profit as is given by bidder company. So the assets which target company is using is quite more than bidder company. In a way, this makes a target company little less riskier because it has a good asset base. So net asset value maybe more for the target company. So we are taking just arbitrary figures just to understand the next level of our concept. And the concept is, the shareholders of target company wants to acquire the shares of bidder company. Bidder company wants to acquire target company. So target company's shareholders tells the bidder company shareholders that, see, we are ready to give you all our assets and liabilities, but in return, what do we want? We want shares of your company. We want to become shareholders of your company. This is the demand of target company. Naturally, you want something in return. And I am assuming that there is no cash consideration involved as of now. We cannot exchange the companies, or the target company cannot be acquired in terms of cash. So bidder company cannot give cash to target company. This is a pre-established notion which I am starting off with. So sir, how would bidder company acquire target company? Guys, bidder company will acquire target company on the basis of shares which bidder company will issue to the target company shareholders. And those number of shares will serve as a purchase consideration for the target company shareholders to sell off their shares to the bidder company. That is the deal which is going to happen between these two companies. So after the deal has happened, what will happen is, target company will have no shareholders. Bidder company will have additional shareholders, which is the bidder company shareholders plus the shareholders of the target company. So additional shareholders will be there in bidder company. Target company will not have any assets or liabilities, and bidder company will have an increase in its assets and liabilities. The holding power will of course remain with the bidder company of the merged bidder company, but a minuscule part or a portion of the entire holding will also be with target company's shareholders. This is the mode of dealing, mode of exchange which will happen between the target company and the bidder company. Now the question is, if you look from the perspective of bidder company, then what would bidder company's shareholders and management think? So they would think that let us issue minimal shares to the target company shareholders. Minimal means if they are holding 5,000 in their company, let us issue only 1,000 or only 500 shares in the bidder company. Let us not be very generous, and let us not be very philanthropic, and let us issue minimal shares as possible to the target company shareholders. Why is this thought coming in the minds of bidder company shareholders, guys? This thought is coming because more the shares which will be issued by the bidder company to target company shareholders, the dilution of existing shareholders will happen as much as number of shares which are issued to target company shareholders. So if bidder company issues large number of shares to target company shareholders, then the bidder company's original shareholding will dilute, their power will dilute, their rights will dilute, and no one wants their rights to be diluted. No one wants their powers to be diluted. So this is a apprehension in mind of bidder company shareholders that, see, if we issue additional shares to the target company shareholders, then our holding will get diluted, and we do not want our holdings to get diluted. That is the thought process going on in the minds of bidder company shareholders. And at the same time, what would be going through in the minds of target company shareholders, guys? Target company shareholders would think that let us acquire maximum shares from bidder company so that our holding in bidder company post merger should be substantial. We should be holding good voting power. We should be holding good rights so that decisions are made according to us. We should be having a good stake in the bidder company post merger. This is the thought which is going through in the mind of target company. Alright, so from the perspective of the target company, more the number of shares which are issued in bidder company, better it is. So target company would want that against their 5,000 shares, they should be issued 15,000 shares in bidder company, or 20,000 shares in bidder company, or 30,000 shares in bidder company. They would want this. In respect of their 5,000 shares in their company, they would be ready to chuck these shares. They would be ready to dilute these shares and do away with these shares. But they want that more and more number of shares should be issued in bidder company to the existing shareholders of target company. They want more shares. And if you see, shareholders of bidder company, according to their perspective, guys, they want lesser number of shares to be issued to target company, as less as possible. So they would attempt in their negotiations, what they would attempt is, array, you can only get 500 shares in my company if you want to merge to my company, only 500 shares, or maybe 200, 300 shares, or maybe at max 1000 shares. I will issue you only 1000 shares in my company. And what would target company want? Target company would say, no, we at least want 5,000 shares in your company, or give us higher. Higher means 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, whatever higher you want. They would negotiate for a higher number of shares, and bidder company would negotiate for a lower number of shares. Now this is a conflicting situation. To end this conflicting situation, a CMA, a qualified CMA, yes, just like you would become after a while, a qualified sensible CMA who's done business valuation, who studied business valuation well, and who has done mergers and acquisition well, he would come to rescue at this situation. He would come to save both of these from fighting and juggling with each other. How would that CMA come into picture? He would say, relax. First of all, he'll say, relax. Drink some cold water or drink some cold drink. Relax. He would tell the shareholders of target company that you like Fanta, please drink Fanta. You like Pepsi, please drink Pepsi. and he would tell the shareholders of bidder company that you like cold drinks, please drink cold drink and please be calm and please be composed, because everything is resolvable over the table, nothing is to be aggressively dealt with, so please relax. He would first of all relax both of these parties. And if he is a neutral guy in the sense he is not neither favoring bidder company nor favoring target company, then he would tell you that please see the vital stats of both of the companies and then decide what should be the ideal exchange ratio. Exchange ratio means number of shares which are issued to target company in the bidder company in against the existing shares of the target company. This is known as the exchange ratio. So the sensible and smart CMA will tell both target company and bidder company, hey look, relax, you just need to see the vital stats which are there existingly for both the companies, and then you should decide how would you exchange your shares. Both of the company shareholders think, yes, he's a sensible man, after all he's a CMA, first attempt qualified, rank holder CMA, of course we would listen to him, he's a sensible person. So dear Mr. CMA, please go on. So CMA tells target company shareholders, see, you are earning 3 rupees per share on your number of shares, which means you are earning 15,000 rupees in total. Target company shareholders will say, of course, we are earning 15,000 rupees in total. What new are you telling us? We already know this fact. We are earning 15,000 rupees in total. So bidder company will give you 4 rupees per share. Target company shareholders will say, of course, we can see that. We can see that bidder company will give us an earnings per share of rupees 4 per share. What's the big deal in it? What are you trying to say? What is the new thing which you are trying to propel? So target company shareholders are asking the CMA, what are you trying to say? CMA tells them, listen, if you are earning 15,000 rupees in total in target company, then ideally, just because merger is happening, we cannot give you more than what you are earning. So ideally, you should earn the same amount in the merged bidder company as well. Target company shareholders say, okay, we don't accept what you are saying, but go on. So CMA says that if you join bidder company, then you will be earning 4 rupees per share. So ideally you should divide 15,000 rupees with 4 to get the number of shares which should be issued to you in bidder company. Valid point. So guys, I'll tell you a calculation. 4 multiplied by 3750 is equal to 3 multiplied by 50,000. No one should be enriched unjustifiably. Everyone should have equal right to have an equal deal. No one has a right to be overpowered by other person. So if you're earning 15,000 pre-merger, please earn 15,000 after merger as well. And the mode of earning 15,000 post-merger as well is that you should divide your entire earning with the earnings per share which will be offered to you by the bidder company. Shareholders say, fair point. So if we follow the EPS rule or the EPS mode, then the shares which should be issued to the target company shareholders should be lesser than their original holdings. Why? Because in case of EPS, they fail. They fail as compared to the bidder company. Target company shareholders fail. So their shares should be less than their original holdings in their company. Valid point. Now, if we come on to the second ratio is MPS, market price per share. Again, the shareholders of target company are looking down, their eyes are down, and they are not able to face the bidder company or the CMA, because again they are failing. Again their ratio is less than, their statistics is less than the bidder company. So again the same thing happens, that if the market capitalization of the target company shareholders is 20 divided by 5,000, then their market capitalization post merger should ideally remain the same. It should not increase. They should not be unjustifiably enriched. their proportion should be equal. Their holding power should be equal. So, to have that equal power, number of shares which should be issued to them to have the equal power should be 20 multiplied by 5000 divided by 25, which is 4000 shares. So guys, again the same calculation, 25 multiplied by 4000 is equal to 20 multiplied by 5000. This is the way you can resolve your fight. Both of the shareholders can resolve their fight with respect to how much shares should be issued to the target company shareholders in bidder company shareholders. Perfect, sir. So this is the second way in which we can exchange the shares. So then comes the third point, NAV or book value per share. And in this point, the shareholders of target company are feeling proud, have a unique glow on their face, and they're really happy about the fact that their NAV is more than bidder company's NAV. They are raising their collars like this and they are saying, see, our company has more NAV than bidder company. If our company has more NAV, then we deserve more number of shares. The CMA says absolutely right. So your NAV should be multiplied by number of shares and divided by NAV of the bidder company. You should deserve shares more than the existing 5000 shares. This comes out to 5333 shares. So now the shareholders of target company are happy, are really happy to see that they are getting more number of shares. So these are the three ways, and for an example 3 ways, there can be more ways to calculate swap ratio. These are the primary 3 ways by which we can calculate the swap ratio. So sir, we have given a broad direction to both the shareholders of bidder company and target company to at least sit down and start their conversations. Now let me tell you, there is no good or bad ratio out of all three, a best ratio or a worst ratio. There's nothing like it. In different situations, different ratios can be used. Sometimes what happens is company use an amalgamation of all three ratios. How can they amalgamate it? They give weights. So they'll give 25% weight to EPS. They will give 40% weight to say MPS, and they will give the balance weight to say NAV. And they will mix all three of them and they will arrive at the swap ratio. Now sir, what is this swap ratio? Guys, the round circle which I am making is the swap ratio. This circle is the swap ratio. Swap ratio is EPS oblique MPS oblique NAV of the target company divided by EPS oblique MPS oblique NAV of the bidder company. This is the ratio in which the shareholdings will be distributed. This is the ratio in which the target company shareholders will get new number of shares in the bidder company. This ratio is known as the swap ratio, or another name, share exchange ratio. This is the exchange ratio. Let's repeat the formula once again, guys. The formula is EPS oblique MPS oblique BVPS of the target company divided by EPS oblique MPS oblique BVPS of the bidder company. This is the formula of swap ratio. No need to mug up the formula, because formula is basically a concept. You can easily refer to the concept which I have taught you. Concept is that person who has got a lower ratio should be at a loss. Loss means if target company is at a loss, then it will be getting less number of shares than its original holding. If bidder company is at a loss, then it will be issuing more number of shares as compared to the original shares of target company. This is the concept between target company and bidder company's shares, and this is the concept behind swap ratio. Once again, to reiterate, there's nothing good or bad. In different situations, different are used, different ratios may be used, depends on your situation, your bargaining power. A negotiation will happen across the counter, just like you would go and negotiate for anything which you purchase from market. Similarly, bidder company would negotiate for itself, target company will negotiate for itself, and during this negotiation, one swap ratio will be determined by both the shareholders, and one swap ratio will be fixed for this particular deal. Now let us see some theoretical portion surrounding this particular concept. Let us read mode of consideration for mergers and acquisition deal. So the purchase consideration may be paid in terms of cash or shares. The more popular method of payment in large transactions is predominantly stock for stock. Stock for stock means shares to shares. Such settlement of an acquisition transaction through equity shares of the acquirer is also technically called equity as currency of the deal. So instead of using a currency, instead of using money, we are using equity shares. So swap ratio is the ratio at which an acquiring company will offer its own shares in exchange for the target company's shares during a merger or acquisition. For example, 10 shares of target company are exchanged for 1 share in the acquiring company, and in this case the swap ratio is 1:10, 1 by 10. Basis of computation of swap ratio: one or a mix of the following basis may be used to compute the swap ratio. Guys, it can be earnings per share, it can be market price per share, it can be book value per share, or it can be net assets value. Then what is the formula for swap ratio? We have just studied the formula for swap ratio. EPS oblique MPS oblique BVPS oblique NAV of the target company or acquired company or the selling company divided by EPS oblique MPS oblique BVPS oblique NAV of the bidder company or the acquirer company or the buying company. So that is the formula which is used for the swap ratio. Okay, now let us see in which situations would a particular swap ratio be referred to more as compared to other situations. So no earmark formula, nothing is fixed, nothing is law. As I've already told you, there's no law surrounding it. It depends on the mutual negotiation, mutual agreement. So on the basis of EPS, computation is using the formula of EPS. Then suitability is when there are no differential risks associated with two companies entering into merger. So if the risks and rewards are same for both the companies, then EPS may be used. Demerits is that difference in growth rate of the earnings of two companies will not be highlighted. So if you use EPS, guys, then if one company is growing at a faster pace than another company, then EPS might not be a very good idea or might not be a very good tool to determine the exchange ratio. Gains in earnings arising out of merger are not considered to determine the exchange ratio. Now, one lacuna with this method is that the synergy benefit is not taken account for, is not taken care of. Synergy benefits are excluded while computing the share exchange ratio. Then what is the suitability of market price per share as a method for computing swap ratio? It is when the shares of the acquiring company and target firm are actively traded in market. But obvious, if a company is heavily traded in market, stock exchange are dealt with in the stock market, then MPS would be there. Otherwise, guys, MPS would not be there. So to have MPS in place, to have MPS figure there, you need to have a stock market running script. It's known as script in stock market. You should have a script in stock market. So the companies which are not active in stock market, they cannot use MPS as a medium of share exchange. Then demerits: when the share trading is thin, market prices may not be a reliable measure. Share trading is thin means that shares are not traded heavily and shares are traded in less quantum as compared to other companies' shares. So share trading is thin. In case share trading is thin, then market prices do not really reflect the sentiments of the market or demand and supply position of the market accurately. So when the share trading is thin, then probably MPS would not be a good idea. Then when market prices may be manipulated by a vested interest and exchange ratio determined may not be reflected in the true position. Guys, it is very, very usual phenomena in stock markets that market price are carefully manipulated, especially just before the new issue comes in the market, the owners of the companies take care that they bribe their brokers and their commission agents to ensure that their prices of the shares are high, so that their issue goes fully subscribed. So this manipulation in stock market has happened in past, and there's a possibility to it. Personally, I have bought, guys, shares of one of the companies, and I won't name it because I don't mean to disrepute that company, but I bought the company shares at somewhat around 825 per share in the issue price. 10 rupees shares being sold at 825, premium of 815 rupees. A very big brand coming up with an IPO, and they had instructed their brokers and commission agents to create a buzz in market and to inflate their prices, because stock brokers have this some leeway of influencing the stock markets, influencing the prices a lot. So they had carefully ensured that the market shows a very good review of the company and the stock price, and the stock the issue is fully subscribed. And this is what happened: the issue was fully subscribed, but within 2 months of the subscription of the issue, shares trembled, and till today they have reached only 400 per share, not beyond that. I have incurred losses on that particular share. So MPS is not a very reliable measure of computing the swap ratio, because it is driven by market forces. Market forces can definitely be influenced by certain people, certain mediators, and even the owners of the company, the board of directors of the company, etc. Next is book value per share. What is the suitability of book value per share? If accounting policies are to be reflected in determination of exchange ratio. So book value typically is driven by the accounting process and accounting computations, accounting standards, accounting policies and procedures which are followed by a particular company. So wherever accounting is done not properly, and wherever there is a difference between accounting policies of two companies, their book value will show some different pictures. So if you are aware about the accounting policy differences, then only rely on BVPS. Otherwise, BVPS is not a very good way to exchange shares. Exchange ratio determined under this method does not reflect purchasing power of money. So purchasing power of money, that is true value of money, is not reflected if you use BVPS, and are highly different from true economic values. They may be highly different from true economic values. That is the downside of using BVPS, or book value per share. So guys, this is the concept of swap ratio, and the concept of swap ratio is surrounded around the four corners of negotiation, because ultimately swap ratio is not determined by you, not determined by me, not determined by law. Law is silent about it. Swap ratio is only and only determined by the representatives of both the companies who meet together and agree upon a swap ratio. So sir, if a question comes in the examination, then how would we know that what is the swap ratio? Guys, don't worry about this. If a question comes for computing the swap ratio, they will tell themselves that this is the swap ratio which we want. You need not think about swap ratio at all. However, in the entire syllabus, there is one question which I have deliberately put, where both you and me will put in a thought on how would the swap ratio be computed, should be chosen when there is nothing given in the question. So there is one question which I have put in my study mat, whereby both me and you will together decide which swap ratio out of these three should be the chosen ones. There's only one question, and we'll be able to decide it very straightforwardly and very clearly. So don't worry about that. Question will be apparently clear about what should be the swap ratio in every merger and acquisition deal question which is coming in the examination. Got it, sir? Okay, so this is the concept of swap ratio. Now I am moving on to another concept. Name of the concept is earnings per share. So this is not new to us. We have been studying it since ages. This is an old concept. This is an inter-concept. Okay, if you say so. If it's an inter-concept, please tell me what is this concept. Sir, this concept says that profit after tax available to the shareholders divided by number of shares. this gives the value of earnings per share. So this is the concept which we have studied since ages in our accounts, in maybe FM, many other places. We have studied this formula. Formula is pretty straightforward, sir, and it's easy. Formula is profit after tax available to the shareholders. So profits which are available to the shareholders divided by number of shares. As many shares are there in this particular company, those number of shares are to be written in the denominator, and numerator is profits available to the equity shareholder. This is the EPS. You are right. Absolutely right. Now, I want you to write another formula, or rather, create another formula. So both of us will create another formula this time. Okay. Okay, sir. Ready. Sir, what formula do we need to create? I want you to create formula of new earnings per share. Sir, new earnings per share means? I'll tell you. New earnings per share means, this is the earnings per share formula for the bidder company. This is the earnings per share formula for the target company. Now suppose if these two companies meet together, these two companies amalgamate, then what will be the amalgamated earnings per share or new earnings per share post merger? After merger, what will be the new earnings per share? Oh, so sir, you are wanting us to give you the earning per share of bidder company post merger of target company. Absolutely. I want the earning per share of the bidder company post merger of target company. When target company's shareholders becomes the shareholders of the bidder company, when these two companies merge together, when these two companies combine together, what will be the new earnings per share in that case? Okay, sir. Let's write the formula. So the formula should be profit after tax of bidder company. Yes, sir, of course. The original profits of bidder company. So if we see this formula, then the original profits are 40,000 rupees. 40,000 rupees. 10,000 multiplied by 4. That is the earnings which are given to the shareholders of bidder company. So profit after tax of bidder company. Perfect, sir. Add profits after tax of target company. Makes sense, sir. Makes a lot of sense. Target company profits are to be added. 15,000 rupees. 50,000 multiplied by 3. 1,50,000 rupees. Sorry, 5,000 rupees. 5,000 shares multiplied by 3. 15,000 rupees should also be added. Because, sir, profits of target company also becomes profit of bidder company. Of course. So the first part is profit after tax of bidder company. Second part is profit after tax of target company. Do you want to add one more thing? Sir, what one more thing? What is that one more thing? 1 plus 1 is equal to what? 2 or 3? Sir, 3. So 1 plus 1, this is 1, this is 1. What would it make? 3. So there has to be a third element. Yes, sir, there has to be a third element, which is known as synergy. Absolutely. So I will add one more thing to the numerator, which is synergy benefit. Yes, sir. Now this seems perfect because we have added 1 plus 1 is equal to 3, which is the golden principle of mergers and acquisition, which refers to the synergy benefits which are accruing because of the mergers and acquisition. And yes, sir, of course, this should be added while computing the profits after tax. Yes, sir. So profit after tax of bidder company, profit after tax of target company, and synergy benefits accumulated together becomes the profit of the merged company post merger. Perfect. Now what should be the denominator? The denominator should be number of shares. Now there are two kind of shares which are there in the merged bidder company. Shares number 1, shares of bidder company. Of course, sir, bidder company shares are there. Original shares which I am referring to, this now 10,000 shares. This is the original number of shares which are there of bidder company shareholders. These shares, of course, will remain. Then I am going to add shares of target company. these shares of target company. But tell me something. Would these shares be as it is issued in target in bidder company? Would these shares be as it is issued in bidder company? Or would these shares be multiplied by some ratio and then issued to bidder company? Of course, sir, it should be multiplied by a ratio, and the name of the ratio is swap ratio. So in my example, if you choose EPS as the mode of exchange, if EPS is the mode of exchange, then bidder company's shares are 10,000. How many target companies shares should be additionally issued? 3750. So what would be the new number of shares of bidder company post merger? It will be 13,750, and this will appear in the denominator. 13,750, which is shares of bidder company plus shares of target company. Shares of target company are 5,000 existing shares multiplied by the swap ratio. The swap ratio in case of EPS was 3/4. So in terms of ratio, it will come out to 0.75. So 0.75 will be multiplied by 5,000, and then I will be arriving at the number which will be the shares issued to the shareholders of target company in the new bidder company after merger. So the formula states in the denominator, the formula states that shares of bidder company as it is, 10,000 as it is, plus shares of target company multiplied by the swap ratio. That is the formula of new earnings per share post merger. So after merger, the new earnings per share will be calculated using this formula. I hope you understood the formula, the logic behind the formula. Why I am trying to make you understand the logic behind the formula. Why can't I tell you that, okay, please mug this up? No, because we'll be twisting this formula, tweaking this formula as per the requirement of the question. So you need to understand each and every element of this formula, so that the moment question asks me to tweak this formula, twist this formula, I am able to do it easily, because these things will might undergo change depending upon the situation. Therefore you need to understand this formula and not mug it. Of course you can, there's an easy way out, you can just mug it randomly, but I would not suggest you to mug it randomly, because we need to apply this formula differently in different situations. So let us first revise this formula once again. Let us learn this formula. So my earnings per share should contain a numerator and a denominator. The numerator should contain the profits for the year. Yes, sir. Sir, the profit should be two kind of profits. No. The profit should be three kind of profits, because 1 plus 1 is equal to 2. Therefore, it cannot be two kind of profits. It has to be three kind of profits. First profit is the profit which is available to the bidder company shareholders. Second profit is the profit which is available to the target company shareholders. And third is the synergy benefit. Synergy benefit means if these two companies combine, then there will be some additional profit which will be further added, and that will contribute to the profits of the entire merged company. So there are three set of profits which are to be amalgamated to form the profits of the bidder company post merger. One is profit of bidder company, another one is profit of target company, and the third one is synergy benefits. This will form the numerator of our new earnings per share formula. Yes, sir. What will be in the denominator? The denominator would contain number of shares of bidder company, original number of shares, which will remain intact. Number of shares of target company, which will undergo a change. And how it will undergo a change? It should be multiplied by the swap ratio which has been agreed between the two parties. And that swap ratio, when you multiply that swap ratio, then the new number of shares which are to be issued by bidder company to the target company shareholders will be computed. So our denominator is arrived by adding the shares of bidder company plus the shares of target company multiplied by the swap ratio. This is the formula of new earnings per share. Let's read some theory bit. So NEPS refers to the EPS available to the shareholders post merger. Following formula may be used: earnings of bidder company pre-merger, earnings of target company pre-merger plus synergy benefit divided by share of bidder company plus shares of target company multiplied by swap ratio. This is the formula of new earnings per share. And note, in case synergy benefit is not given in the question, in case some of the question would be silent about synergy benefits, then you can assume it as 0. It can be assumed as 0. Okay, sir. Sir, got the theory part. Sir, but unless and until you start a practical question and you tell us how can we deal with a practical question, sir, we won't be able to understand the theory concept. So guys, let us start a practical question. So let's start a practical question of swap ratio. Illustration number 2. Akash Limited wants to take over Watson Limited and the financial details are as follows. Preference share capital, equity share capital, share premium, profit and loss account, 10% debentures, total liabilities, then fixed assets, current assets, total assets, profit after tax and preference dividends, market price per share of the shares of each of the companies. Requirements. What should be the share exchange ratio to be offered to the shareholders of Watson Limited based on net assets value, earnings per share and market price per share? So on these three bases you have to calculate the share exchange ratio. B part, which should be preferred option from the point of view of Akash Limited? So guys, Akash Limited is the bidder company who wants to take over Watson Limited. So you need to tell whether the which ratio should be appropriate for Akash Limited perspective. So we will have a ratio which will yield us less number of shares. From perspective of bidder company, lesser the shares, better it is. So we'll have the ratio which will yield less number of shares. So that is preferred with the respect of Akash Limited. So guys, on the contrary, what would be the preferred ratio in respect of Watson Limited? The preferred ratio should be the ratio which yields the maximum number of shares or which yield the maximum swap ratio. That will be preferred from the point of view of Watson Limited. So let's compute first of all the share exchange ratio on the basis of three parameters which are given in the question. Computation of share exchange ratio using various parameters. So the first parameter is on the basis of NAV. Guys, please tell me, what do you mean by NAV? Of course, sir, NAV means net assets value. Now, unfortunately, NAV has not been given in the question. So first we need to compute NAV and only then can we compute the share exchange ratio. So let us write the formula and compute the NAV. In this case, share exchange ratio will be equal to NAV of, the numerator should always be the target company. So NAV of Watson Limited divided by NAV of Akash Limited. This is the swap ratio or the share exchange ratio which should be derived at using the NAV criteria. Now let us create a working note, guys, and we'll compute the NAV of both the companies. So is it important to write the working notes, etc.? Sir, why can't we do the workings, on a rough side or on a rough paper and just get away with it? Okay, so I'll tell you what is the reason behind properly presenting your questions in a proper manner. So guys, there's something called impression. If you create a lasting impression on the examiner, then he is bound to give you extra marks. So it's all about impression. How did you create the impression on the examiner? And remember, examiner is a human being. Examiner is not a machine that it will mechanically do whatever it will do. It will apply its mind, its logical reasoning, as well as some emotions he will also apply his heart to the paper. So his emotions will get impacted. So his impression of you will definitely help you to fetch more marks from the examiner. And a lasting impression is created when you present your paper in a proper manner. So whenever examiner is reviewing a particular question, and if he sees that your answer is incorrect, he will of course give a 0 to you if your answer is incorrect. But when he would see that no, you have done the workings in an appropriate manner, and there's one point, a very small point in the working which you've done erroneously, because of which answer is erroneous, he would definitely give you marks for working. So if your working is presented in a proper manner, you will definitely get more marks as compared to a person who's not presenting his workings in a proper manner. This is my commitment to you. This is my observation, which will definitely result into more marks for all of you. So please make the working notes as elaborate and as proper as possible. And making working notes is always a habit. So just have this good habit, and it will help you all through all your practical exams subjects. So we get these kind of lectures every day from our teachers, several teachers, but sir, we don't want to invest our time in all these things, sir. It's so difficult to clear the paper on time, to complete the paper on time, and you are asking us to spend time in preparing working notes, sir. हमसे ना हो पाएगा. We cannot do it, sir. Not possible. Yes, I understand your problem. Okay, if possible then do, and if not possible then don't. Cannot force anything upon you. I can just share my experiences with you, that's it. Yes sir, so nice of you, sir. Thank you, sir. Okay, so the total assets are 173.61. What are the liabilities? The external liabilities, 10% debentures, debentures, 15 and 5. Preference share capital, no current liabilities as such, no sir. So preference share capital is 20 and 0. So what are the total external liabilities? It's 35 and 5. So what is the net assets value? It's A minus B. Sir, it's 138 and 56. What are the number of shares, guys? Number of shares, so that I can compute the NAV per share. NAV per share. This is okay, so this is C, this A, this is B, this is C is equal to, and D is equal to, this is D, this is E is equal to C divided by D. What are the number of shares which are there? So Aakash Limited has 10 shares and this is 5, so this comes out to 13.8, and 56 divided by 5 is 11.2. So this is the NAV which has been computed by us, 11.2 in case of Watson Limited and 13.8 in case of Aakash Limited. This is the NAV which we have computed. Now we'll fix this NAV in our formula, and the share exchange ratio is computed as 11.2 divided by 13.8. This comes out to 0.81 times. So 2 decimal places are more than enough for a computation of swap ratio. So the first swap ratio comes out to 0.8281 times. 0.81 times. So let's write a conclusion. After you've computed the share exchange ratio, over here let's write a conclusion. Hence, the share exchange ratio computed on the basis of NAV is 0.81 times. Is 0.81 times. Full stop. Now if I ask you what is the number of shares which will be issued to Watson Limited as per this ratio, so you will tell me that, sir, number of shares will be the existing shares of Watson Limited, which is 5, existing shares of Watson Limited, which is 5, multiplied by 0.81, which comes out to 4.06 shares. Obviously figures are in lakhs, so 4.06 lakh shares. Please write this down as well, because while drafting our answer for part B, we'll be requiring these number of shares as well apart from the swap ratio. So the next line would state that therefore the new number of shares to be issued to the shareholders of Watson Limited, the new number of shares to be issued to the shareholders of Watson Limited is computed as 4.06 lakh shares. 4.06 lakh shares. Okay, sir, we precisely got the idea of how to compute the new number of shares and how to compute the new earnings per ratio. Guys, now the second part which we are going to deal with is that how can we calculate the swap ratio on the basis of EPS. So let's see. Second part is on the basis of EPS, earnings per share, on the basis of EPS. Let us write the formula first. Share exchange ratio is equal to EPS of Watson Limited divided by EPS of Akash Limited. So the formula remains the same. It's just that NAV is replaced by EPS. Of course, sir, this is the standard formula of share exchange ratio. Now the question is, so what is the EPS of both the companies? Again, let us compute the EPS of both the companies because it is not given in the question. Working note number 2, computation of EPS of both the companies. So this is the pre-merger EPS which we want to compute for both the companies, for Akash Limited and Watson Limited. So sir, the profit which is given to us after tax and preference dividend. Okay, perfect. So profit which is attributable to the equity shareholders is actually given to us, which actually is required by us. So profit after tax and preference dividend, it's 24 and 15. Amount is in rupees lakhs. Simply we just need to divide it by number of shares, A, B, C. So EPS is A divided by B. So what are the number of shares? Guys, we have already written it over there, 10 and 5. So this comes out to 2.4 and 3. Now without calculating the swap ratio, tell me, would if chosen basis is EPS, would the number of shares be more for Vatsan Limited than 5 lakh, or will be less for Vatsan Limited than 5 lakhs? Sir, it will be more for Vatsan Limited than 5 lakhs. Why? Because here Vatsan Limited is leading as compared to Aakash Limited. Vatsan Limited is ahead of Aakash Limited. So Vatsan Limited will get more number of shares as compared to its original holding of 5 lakh shares. It can be 5 lakh, 25,000, 5 lakh, 50,000. We'll see that. But definitely it will be more than the existing number of shares of 5 lakhs. Guys, similarly, if you see these two figures, then it is very, very apparent that Vatsan Limited will get lesser number of shares as compared to the Aakash Limited company, Aakash Limited, its original shares. So Vatsan Limited will get less number of shares as compared to 5 lakh, its original holdings, and that is what happened. Guys, Vatsan Limited got less than 5 lakh shares. It got only 4 lakh 6,000 shares. However, in case of EPS, the situation is reverse. The situation is that EPS of Vatsan Limited is more and EPS of Aakash Limited is less. In such a situation, of course, the shareholders of Vatsan Limited will reap benefit and will get more number of shares as compared to Aakash Limited. So what is the swap ratio? Swap ratio is 3 divided by 2.4. It is 1.25 times. 1.25 times. And again, my question to you would be, what will be the number of shares issued to Vatsan Limited in Aakash Limited if EPS is the chosen basis of swap ratio? Then sir, it will be 6.25 lakhs shares. Let's conclude, guys. Hence the number of share, hence the swap ratio computed on the basis of EPS. Hence the swap ratio computed on the basis of EPS is 1.25 times. Full stop. Therefore, the number of shares, therefore, the number of shares to be issued to the shareholders of Vatsan Limited, to be issued to the shareholders of Vatsan Limited is 6.25 lakh shares, is 6.25 lakh shares. So guys, if you see from the point of view of Vatsan Limited, it's a really favorable deal. However, from the point of view of Aakash Limited, this is a very, very favorable deal. Now let's see what will finally be decided. We need to calculate one more ratio and then we'll decide which one should be the favorable one and which one should be the unfavorable one. So last basis on which we need to compute the swap ratio is on the basis of MPS. Formula remains the same. Share exchange ratio is equal to MPS of Watson Limited divided by MPS of Akash Limited. And guys, fortunately MPS is already given in the question, so you need not struggle with MPS. MPS is already given. 24 and 27. 24 of Akash Limited, 27 of Watson Limited. I am not writing the MPS. Now I am pausing over here. You need to tell me whether on the basis of MPS would the shares which are to be issued to the target company, that is Watson Limited, be more than 5 lakhs or less than 5 lakhs. If you just focus on MPS, yes, it will be more than 5 lakhs because MPS of Watson Limited is more favorable than Akash Limited. So it has to be more. Okay, sir. Got the logic. So 27 divided by 24. 1.125 times. What should be the number of shares? Number of shares will be 5 lakh multiplied by 1.125. 5.625 lakh shares. So these are the number of shares which are to be issued in case MPS is taken as the preferred basis of computation of swap ratio. Let's conclude. Hence, the swap ratio computed on the basis of MPS, hence the swap ratio computed on the basis of MPS is 1.125 times. Full stop. Therefore, the number of shares, to be issued to the shareholders of Watson Limited, to be issued to the shareholders of Watson Limited is computed as 5.625 lakh shares. Full stop. Okay, so guys, the three ratios are in front of you. Now part B has to be decided by you. Part B is asking you which should be the preferred ratio from the point of view of Akash Limited. So if we are the CMAs of Akash Limited, if we are the cost accountants of Akash Limited, then which ratio will be preferred by Akash Limited? Which ratio will give the maximum benefit to the shareholders of Akash Limited? Guys, Akash Limited is the bidder company, and bidder company will be benefited maximum if the swap ratio is minimum. Target company will be benefited the maximum if swap ratio is maximum. Bidder company will be benefited the maximum if the swap ratio is minimum. So out of the three ratios, swap ratio on the basis of NAV should be the preferred option of Akash Limited. Of course, in negotiation, whether he is able to bang this ratio or not, that's a different thing altogether. But if we theoretically see, then the best ratio out of all the three ratios for the shareholders of Akash Limited is definitely NAV per share. So guys, let's write answer to part number B. Part B, just write the answer. In view of the above calculations, comma, it can be seen that in view of the above calculations, it can be seen that the minimum number of shares are issued when the swap ratio is taken on the basis of NAV. When the swap ratio is taken on the basis of NAV. Full stop. Hence, from the perspective of bidder company Akash Limited, from the perspective of bidder company Akash Limited, comma, lesser the new number of shares, lesser the new number of shares, better it is. Better it is. Full stop. Hence, Akash Limited should prefer the swap ratio on the basis of Akash Limited should prefer the swap ratio on the basis of net assets value, bracket open, that is 0.81 times 0.81 times. Full stop. Okay, so that is the answer to part B. Now I am randomly asking you a question. The examiner doesn't ask you the question, but I am asking you a question. If you are seeing from the perspective of Vatsan Limited, which one would have been your preferred choice? From the point of view of Vatsan Limited, which is the target company, then what would your preference be? Would your preference change? Yes, sir, our preference would have changed, and then we would have chosen EPS as the basis, as it is yielding the maximum number of shares. So from perspective of Vatsan Limited, the swap ratio on the basis of EPS is the preferred swap ratio. Yes. So this was illustration number 2.